And just like that, free agency is over for now. Let's talk about more of these moves next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Thursday, December 2nd. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White, and let's start with Javier Baez, who signed a 6-year, $140 million contract with the Detroit Tigers. He has an opt-out after the second year. This past season, he was pretty damn good, 265 batting average, 31 homers, 18 steals. Scott, what do you think about this venue change for Javi going to the Detroit Tigers?
Well, it's not the greatest, obviously. We saw the impact the opposite way when Nick Castellanos went from Detroit to Chicago. Obviously, Baez finished last year with the Mets, but we know him mostly from his time with the Cubs. Baez doesn't hit cheapies, though. I think his power will mostly translate. The bigger concern for him is what it's always been, just that his skill set is one of so many extremes, and his plate discipline was worse than ever last year, but we didn't really feel it because he became even more of an outlier in the things he's always been an outlier at. BABIP and home run to fly ball rate. They were career highs in both. And how much more can he push the limits on those? Not much. Not much. And it could all come crashing down. I don't think it'll come crashing down this year, but that's always a fear when you're going to draft Baez.
Yeah. I think long-term, you worry about that lack of plate discipline. So, maybe he puts together these, 2 more big-ish years, opts out, see what happens after that. But obviously, we're looking down the line here. Marcus Stroman signed a 3-year, $71 million deal with the Chicago Cubs. Very interesting. A lot of these teams spending money that we maybe didn't expect to spend money, but here we are. Marcus Stroman now with the Cubs. He finished as the SP28 in 5x5 Roto this past season. Scott, what do you think about this move for Stroman?
I mean, he's decidedly mid-tier in fantasy. I don't really think the move changes anything. Obviously, you'd rather him be with a contender that gives him a chance to win a lot of games. But Stroman was plenty useful in fantasy last year, even though he went 10-13 with the Mets. So even if he has a losing record with the Cubs, low ERA, a lot of innings, should still be pretty useful.
All right. We just had a buzzer beater. We're actually recording this on Wednesday night, right before the MLB goes into a lockout. And we had a trade. Hunter Renfro traded to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for Jackie Bradley Jr., David Hamilton, and Alex Benelis. Hunter Renfro, we know, had a really good year with the Red Sox this past season. 259 batting average, 31 homers, 96 RBI, and 816 OPS. What do we think about this move, Scott? Hunter Renfro to the Brewers.
Love to see a power hitter go to the Brewers. I mean, that venue is one that's brought out the best in so many hitters over the years. I'm not sure there's more to bring out of Renfro. I feel like he kind of just had his breakout with the Red Sox and emerged as not a high-end fantasy option, but like a must-start fantasy option. It wasn't clear he'd ever become that after the way his career started. Interesting that the Red Sox wanted to do this. I'm not sure I really understand it from their perspective. They get Jackie Bradley back, a good center fielder, obviously. But Hunter Renfro, stock goes up a little bit.
According to StatCast, if he played all of his games in Milwaukee this past season, he would have had 35 homers rather than the 31 that he hit with the Red Sox. So could be a good move here for Hunter Renfro. Chris Taylor headed back to the Los Angeles Dodgers on a 4-year, $60 million deal, while Raisel Iglesias is headed back to the Angels on a 4-year, $58 million contract. I don't think really much changes with their fantasy value, so let's move on to a few more here, Scott. Some reliever signings. Mark Melancon signed a 2-year, $14 million deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He just led baseball with 39 saves, and there is no doubt that he's going to be the closer in Arizona.
There's also no doubt he's not going to leave the majors in saves again, pitching for a team that just lost 110 games last year. And it's weird that these rebuilding clubs are more active in free agency than like the Yankees and the Dodgers, right? Like, what are the Diamondbacks doing with Mark Melancon? They clearly needed a closer, and he's been a good closer for a long time. You like getting that job security, especially at a time when there are so few assurances as far as saves go. So he'll remain a pretty good commodity in fantasy, even pitching for such a bad team.
All right. And the last move I wanted to mention, Corey Knebel to the Phillies on a 1-year, $10 million contract. Pitched really well for the Dodgers this past season. The problem was only 25 and 2/3 innings, so not a big sample size, but the velocity back up closer to where he was when he was that prime closer for the Milwaukee Brewers. Ian Kennedy is a free agent for the Phillies as well. So as of now, it seems like Corey Knebel might be the closer in Philadelphia.
Yeah, in fact, Dave Dombrowski said they're not pursuing a closer. He said this after they signed Knebel, which maybe it was him tipping the hand a little bit. I don't think, unless the Phillies go out and get like a Craig Kimbrell or something, an obvious closer. I don't think they're going to let us know what their plans are for the ninth inning in any concrete terms, just because that's how teams play this. But Knebel certainly has the ability and has, a bit of a history in the role, if not for all the injuries. So I'm excited about the possibility of closing. I think you still draft like a Mark Melancon ahead of him, because that's what those assurances that's what those assurances are worth. I mean, Knebel is got the big strikeout ability, the clearer closer profile. But since we're not in all likelihood going to know that he's the closer, that drops him a little in the rankings.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. We'll be back again on Tuesday. Bye-bye.